1986, a television host named Geraldo Rivera opened a safe live on air in the basement of Al Capone's former mansion. 30 million Americans held their breath at their screens. When the safe was opened, it contained only a few empty bottles. But the real question was this: if the treasure wasn't there, where was it? Because FBI records were clear. When Al Capone was arrested in 1931, there was $100 million in cash in his organization. This money was never found in any bank account, never turned up in any safe deposit box. $100 million, approximately $2 billion in today's money, had evaporated overnight. And for 90 years, no one has known where this money is, or they know but aren't telling. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, because in upcoming episodes, we'll also tell the story behind the Valentine's Day Massacre and the true story of Jimmy's betrayal, the empire's golden years. Where the money came from, Al Capone's story begins in 1920, when Prohibition went into effect. The alcohol trade became illegal, and this decision sparked the biggest crime wave in American history. Capone was only 21 years old at the time, but when his mentor Johnny Torrio brought him from Brooklyn to Chicago, he saw an opportunity. Chicago had become the center of Prohibition. There were 5,000 speakeasies in the city, hundreds of bootleggers, thousands of men making money from this business. And Capone rose quickly amid this chaos. When Torrio retired in 1925, he left the empire to Capone, to a man who was only 26 years old. But Capone didn't just take over this empire, he expanded it. By 1929, Capone's organization controlled half of Chicago. From bootleg liquor warehouses to gambling halls, from brothels to protection money, everything was part of Capone's empire. And this empire generated an incredible amount of cash. According to calculations the FBI later made, in 1929, Capone's organization was earning approximately $2 million in cash per week. $8 million a month, approximately $100 million a year. In today's money, this figure is around $2 billion annually. But the most interesting detail here was this: all this money was cash. There were no checks, no bank transfers, credit cards hadn't been invented yet. Everything was physical money, physical cash. And storing such large amounts of cash was a serious logistical problem. The man who managed financial affairs in Capone's organization was someone named James O'Hare. Jimmy was the only person who knew where the money came from, where it went, how it was stored. And his job was truly difficult because this much cash couldn't be used in daily operations. A certain amount would be kept for bribes, salaries, operational expenses, but the remaining large amounts had to be stored. Depositing in a bank was impossible, because this would both create a tax record and come under FBI surveillance. The only option was to store it physically. But where? Secret warehouses. Chicago's underground vault. If you look at Chicago's map from the 1920s, you'll see hundreds of buildings, cellars, tunnels that don't exist today. Prohibition turned Chicago into an underground city. Bootleggers dug tunnels to escape police raids, built secret warehouses, connected basement floors. And Capone controlled a large part of this underground network. According to FBI records, Capone had at least 20 different secret warehouses in Chicago. Some of these were used to store bootleg liquor, but some were there for another purpose: to store cash. In 1930, the FBI raided one of these warehouses thanks to an informant who had infiltrated Capone's organization. It was a cellar 5 meters deep under an abandoned factory on the south side. When FBI agents descended into the cellar, the sight they saw was astonishing. Wooden crates lined up against the walls, each filled with cash. When the agents opened the crates, they found a total of $3 million inside. They were all $20 and $50 bills. Their numbers weren't registered. The FBI confiscated the money, but what was really important was this: if there was $3 million in one warehouse, how much was in the other 19 warehouses? When FBI Inspector Frank Wilson began asking this question, he discovered something interesting. He examined the serial numbers of the confiscated money and found a pattern. Most of the bills had been printed in 1926 and 1927. This meant Capone was specifically selecting money for long-term storage. Old used money that left no trace. Wilson wrote in his report, "The suspect is storing cash assets in an organized manner. The contents of each warehouse are cataloged in detail. This is a sign of a professional money storage operation." But it was impossible for the FBI to find all these warehouses because only Capone and Jimmy knew where they were. And when Capone was arrested in 1931, Jimmy disappeared. No one knew where he was. The FBI searched for warehouses for years but could only find a few. The total amount confiscated was $10 million. $90 million remained, and where this $90 million was remained a mystery. The arrest. Hiding the treasure in. October 1931, Al Capone received an 11-year prison sentence for tax evasion. When the verdict was announced, Capone was in shock because his lawyers had convinced him, "You'll get 2 years maximum, then you'll be out." But 11 years was something else. No one could know what would happen to the organization in 11 years, what rivals would do. Most importantly, what would happen to his money. Capone immediately took action. Before going to prison, Capone had a 3-week period, the appeals process. During these 3 weeks, strange activities occurred in Chicago. Capone's men were driving around various points in the city with trucks, entering and leaving abandoned buildings at night. The FBI followed them, but couldn't fully understand what they were doing. One night, FBI agents saw something interesting while following one of Capone's men. The man went to a construction site in Cicero, checked the surroundings, and buried something. The agents waited for the man to leave and dug, but what they found was just an empty metal box. It was as if someone was deliberately misleading the FBI. But the really interesting event happened on Capone's last night at home. May Capone later told the FBI that her husband had 5 different visitors that night. Each met with Capone for half an hour and left. The FBI wanted to learn who these visitors were, but May only said, "They were my husband's old business associates. They were saying goodbye." The FBI tried to find these 5 people, but 3 disappeared within a month. 1 died in a car accident, and 1 left Chicago the following year. These 5 people were thought to be the last people who knew the location of Capone's treasure. When Capone entered prison, he had a single note with him. Something coded was written on it. The FBI photographed the note but never cracked the code. The note read, "4 angels wait at 4 corners. The first where the sun sets, the second where the river turns, the third where the railroad ends, the fourth under the tree." The FBI analyzed this note for years. They called in cryptographers. Linguists examined it, but no one could figure out what it meant. But for treasure hunters, this note was like a map. 4 different locations, 4 different treasure warehouses. But where? The first clue, the Wisconsin farm in the 1960s. An old man came to the FBI's Chicago office and gave information about Capone's treasure. The man said he had worked for one of Capone's men in 1931. He was driving a tractor on a small farm in Wisconsin. One night, Capone's men came to the farm with a truck, dug a large hole in a corner of the field, and buried heavy metal chests in it. The man got curious and asked, "What's inside?" The answer, "Don't ask. You'll be better off forgetting." The man got scared, forgot. But after retirement, his conscience wasn't clear, and he came to the FBI. The FBI immediately took action. They located the farm in southern Wisconsin, 2 hours from Chicago. The farm was still active, but the owner had changed. The FBI obtained excavation permission and came with teams. Metal detectors, radar systems, excavation machines. The media found out and it made the news. Newspapers ran headlines saying Capone's treasure being found. The excavation lasted 3 days. The FBI really did find something in the indicated corner of the field, metal chests. But when they opened the chests, there was no gold or money inside. Only weapons, Thompson submachine guns, pistols, ammunition. Valuable, but not treasure. The FBI was disappointed but learned something. Capone really was storing important things outside Chicago. If he was storing weapons in Wisconsin, he might be storing money in similar remote places. The FBI expanded the map. They listed all possible locations within 100 kilometers of Chicago. Old farms, abandoned buildings, forested areas. The list was too long, and the FBI's resources were limited. The truth was, finding the treasure was a matter of luck, but treasure hunters didn't give up. In the 1970s, a group of amateur treasure hunters inspired by the Wisconsin dig conducted their own research. They analyzed the phrase, "where the sun sets," in Capone's note. The sun sets in the west. What's west of Chicago? A few small towns, lots of farmland, and a lake. Fox Lake. The group researched around Fox Lake and discovered something interesting. In the 1930s, Capone had a small summer house in that area. The house no longer existed. It had been demolished, but the foundations were still standing. The group scanned the area with metal detectors and detected metal chests under the house. The Fox Lake Dig. Geraldo Rivera's fiasco in 1986. Television host Geraldo Rivera bought the house at Fox Lake. Or more accurately, he bought the land because the house had long been demolished. But the basement was still standing. Rivera organized a big show. He would open the basement live on air, find Capone's treasure. 30 million Americans gathered at their screens. Rivera dramatically descended into the basement with a shovel and pickaxe. Cameras followed him. The basement was dark, damp, smelled rotten, and in a corner was a metal safe. When Rivera found the safe, he got excited. "Here it is," he shouted. "Capone's treasure." His team worked to open the safe. The lock was rusted. They forced it. Finally, the safe opened. Cameras zoomed in, and inside, there were empty bottles. Old, broken, worthless bottles. Rivera's face fell. Silence in the studio. Then laughter began. This went down in history as one of the biggest fiascos in television history. But there was something strange about this fiasco. The safe really was there. Someone had put it there. But the valuables inside were missing. So who had taken them? One theory was this. Capone's men might have emptied the treasure in the 1950s. Because Capone had died in 1947, his organization had scattered, but a few loyal men were still alive. And they knew the treasure locations. Maybe they waited for years. Then, when they thought it was safe, they opened the chests and took what was inside. But there was another theory, and this one was more interesting. What if Capone had deliberately left false clues? What if he had created fake treasure locations to mislead the FBI? Capone was a smart man. He loved planning everything. Maybe the real treasure was never at these locations. Maybe it was in a completely different place. Maybe it was in the heart of Chicago, in plain sight, but no one was seeing it. Cracking the code. The Secret of the Four Angels in 2003. A retired Chicago police detective named Robert Michaels decided to re-examine Capone's note. Michaels had worked in the organized crime unit for 30 years, had followed the remnants of Capone's organization for years. And when he retired, he started a hobby project, finding Capone's treasure. He got a photograph of the note from FBI archives and conducted his own research. He analyzed the sentence, "Four angels wait at 4 corners." Michaels thought this might not be geographical coordinates, but symbolic references. He examined Chicago's map from the 1930s and saw a pattern. Capone had 4 major facilities under his control. A brewery in the southwest, a warehouse in the northwest, a hotel in the southeast, a garage in the northeast. 4 corners, 4 angels. Each represented a section of Chicago. Michaels associated the phrase, "where the sun sets," with the brewery. Southwest, the direction where the sun sets. Where the river turns pointed to the Big Bend of the Chicago River, the hotel area. Where the railroad ends was the old train station outside the city, near the garage. Under the tree was the most mysterious. Michaels interpreted this phrase not literally, but figuratively. In the 1930s in Chicago, there was a man nicknamed The Tree, Tony the Oak Roselli. And Roselli's warehouse was right in the northwest. Michaels visited these 4 locations to test his theory. The brewery had been demolished. A shopping mall had been built in its place. The hotel was still standing but had been converted. The garage had become a parking lot. The warehouse was abandoned. Michaels scanned the warehouse with a metal detector and found something interesting. There were voids under the building's foundations. As if there was a secret cellar. Michaels applied to the municipality for excavation permission but was rejected. The building had hazardous structure status. Excavation was considered dangerous. But Michaels didn't give up. He worked with ground radar experts and mapped the structure under the building. The results were astonishing. There was a cellar 5 meters deep, 4 meters wide, and large metal objects appeared inside. Michaels leaked these findings to the media and it made the news. Headlines read, "Has Capone's treasure finally been found?" But the story had a problem. Who would buy the warehouse and who would finance the dig? Modern searches, technology, and obsession in. The 2010s, treasure hunting took on a new dimension. Ground radar technology developed, metal detectors became more sensitive, satellite image analysis became widespread, and Capone's treasure became the holy grail for a new generation of hunters. Reddit forums, YouTube channels, dedicated websites filled with treasure theories. Some were serious research, some were funny conspiracy theories. A group of engineers analyzed Capone's note with a machine learning algorithm. The algorithm scanned all of Chicago's structures from the 1930s, street names, business records, and suggested the 5 most likely locations. One of them was a church in Cicero. The church was still active and the priest had absolutely refused excavation permission. But the group managed to scan the church with ground radar and found an interesting anomaly. There was a structure under the church that didn't appear on maps. Could it be a secret cellar? In 2015, an entrepreneur founded a company to find Capone's treasure. He collected money from investors, formed a professional team, bought technology. The company's promise was this: we'll find the treasure within 2 years. 50% of the money found will go to investors. The project attracted great interest. $2 million was raised. The team conducted excavations in various places around Chicago. But after 2 years, they found nothing, and the company went bankrupt. Investors lost their money and took the project to court as fraud. But perhaps the most interesting search happened in 2018. Capone's grandson, Robert Capone, came to Chicago to make a documentary about his grandfather. During documentary filming, Robert examined the family's old photographs and noticed something. In one of the photographs, Capone was standing under a tree and holding a map in his hand. Robert enlarged this map and examined it. The map showed a section of Chicago, and there was an X mark on it. Robert tried to identify this location and discovered something interesting. The X mark indicated an area that is now a national park. Robert applied to park management and obtained permission to scan the area under the name of documentary filming. With his team, they scanned the park with ground radar and detected metal reflections at the point indicated by the X mark. But getting excavation permission was much harder because this was a protected area. Robert struggled with bureaucracy for years but got no results. As of 2023, he's still waiting for permission. And maybe the treasure is there, 5 meters underground, under a park. Maybe while children play there, while picnickers sit there. Under them is a $2 billion fortune hidden, real or legend, whether the treasure really exists. But there's a critical question in this whole story. Does Capone's treasure really exist? Maybe it never did. Maybe Capone's $100 million was an exaggeration. Maybe most of the money was spent on the organization, distributed to the men, invested in businesses. Maybe there was nothing left to hide. An analysis the FBI conducted in the 1960s supports this possibility. Capone's organization's financial records were examined in detail and calculations were made. Revenues, expenses, investments. In the end, the FBI reached this conclusion. Capone's organization's so-called $100 million fortune is probably an exaggerated figure. The real figure may be between $10 and $20 million, and a large portion of this amount has already been invested in various operations. But May Capone told a different story. In an interview with a journalist in the 1950s, she said, "Al was a very careful man. He always saved money for bad days. He once told me, 'May, if something happens to me, there's money to take care of you and Sonny, but you'll have to find it.' I never found that money." When Al died, he took his secret with him. One of Capone's lawyers said something similar. In his memoirs written in the 1970s, he wrote, "Al once told me, 'My lawyer, if I go inside, I have money waiting for me somewhere outside. But only 2 people know where it is. One is me, the other is Jimmy, and Jimmy is no longer trustworthy.'" At that moment, I didn't understand what he meant. But then, when I learned that Jimmy had given a statement to the FBI, I understood. Capone was right, Jimmy couldn't be trusted. These statements are important because they show this. Capone's treasure probably was real, but the only person who knew its location was Capone. Even Jimmy might not have known exactly. Maybe Capone had only shown Jimmy the warehouses, but had hidden the really big money somewhere else. Maybe in a place no one knew, where it was impossible to find. Final chapter. Is the treasure still there? Today, 90 years later, Capone's treasure still hasn't been found. Or maybe it has been found but hasn't been disclosed to the public. Because think about it. If someone found that treasure today, what would they do? Would they turn it over to the police? Would they notify the FBI? Or would they quietly take it and disappear? If you find $2 billion in cash, what do you do? In 2020, the Chicago Tribune newspaper published an interesting article. The article said, "In construction work and renovation projects around Chicago in the last decade, a total of 23 old metal chests were found. Most of these chests were empty. Some had old documents in them. But 3 had cash, a total of $600,000. It's impossible to determine the origin of the chests because they're very old, and their serial numbers aren't registered. But the locations where they were found are interesting, all in Capone's known operational areas." What do these findings mean? Maybe Capone's treasure was never in one place. Maybe it was distributed in small pieces all over the city. Dozens, maybe hundreds of chests. And over time, some were found, some are still there. Construction companies found them while excavating but didn't give them to the media. Homeowners found them in their gardens but didn't notify the police. Because who would want to turn over Capone's money? Maybe the treasure legend is more valuable than actually finding it. Because a legend gives hope, gives adventure, makes you dream. But the moment the truth is found, the magic disappears. Because as long as a legend lives, it's mysterious, it's talked about, researched, debated. But the moment the truth is found, it ceases to be a secret. It just becomes a news headline. Even if the headline, "Capone's treasure found," appears in newspapers one day, it's forgotten the next week. But if that treasure is still missing, still there, then Capone is still alive. At least with his story, with the mystery he left. And maybe that's exactly what Al Capone wanted. Couldn't this be the final plan of a man who held control throughout his life, who planned everything, who manipulated people and the system? A puzzle that would keep the FBI, his enemies, and even future generations occupied for decades. Maybe Capone's greatest crime wasn't tax evasion, but deceiving time itself. Because for 90 years, everyone's still chasing him. Today, as you walk the streets of Chicago, some of that money might be buried under you. While sitting in a park, in the foundation of an apartment building, by the side of a railroad track. Maybe there, a few meters down, Capone's money is sitting. But maybe it will never be found. Because some secrets exist not to be found, but to live, to be told, and to keep human curiosity alive. Capone's lost treasure is just such a secret. Still, every few years someone comes forward with a new theory. New documents, new maps, new excavations. Some are serious researchers, some are adventurers chasing fame. But they all start with the same sentence. This time, we'll find it. And every time the result is the same. Dust, rust, empty chests, broken bottles. But still, no one gives up. Because Capone's story isn't just a gangster story. It's a symbol of man's obsession with the unknown, his passion for wealth and mystery. Who knows? Maybe one day a construction worker will swing a pickaxe and hit iron. Maybe that dull sound of metal will be heard. Maybe at that moment, history will be rewritten. But until that day, Al Capone's treasure will remain buried. Not underground, but in the depths of time, of legend, of human curiosity.